to put you on the spot, are you able just to give an overview of the workshop and the flow of where we're at?
Absolutely. So applicant has submitted its draft environmental impact statement. So the next step for this board is to determine whether or not it's adequate in terms of before it accepts it as a final EIS, draft environmental impact statement. And so what this board did last time was review the EIS and provided the applicant with certain comments. The applicant has submitted responses to those comments. So the purpose of this workshop is to determine, take a look at those responses and identify if there are any other inadequacies in the EIS. If you were to determine that the applicant has in fact answered all of the questions that you posed, then at your next meeting, the official meeting, because this is a workshop, you'll vote to accept the EIS as the final EIS. At that point, it will be turned over to the public. It'll have to be public notice, there'll be publications that go out, and then you have the option, but not the obligation, to schedule a public hearing. But on a case like this, it's usually recommended that you do hold a public hearing. There has to be a mandatory written comment period. That's the thing that's not discretionary. And then the public will provide you written comments. They'll provide you set up a public hearing, oral comments, and at that point, those public comments, either through writing or through just verbally here, will then have to be addressed by the applicant and then ultimately by this board. However,
how long is that period?
That there's some discretion there as to how much time you want to provide them to do so. It could be 45 days, 60 days, 90 days. It really just depends on the amount of comments you're getting. Right? You want to give the public enough time to provide you comments, but again, you have to be fair to the applicant. You don't want to drag this on so long where they're suffering impacts. And we can pay that by year. If tonight you're going through your workshop, you determine that the answers they provided you are somehow inadequate or needs to be more fleshed out, then at your next meeting you provide the applicant with that tailored list of what those inadequacies are. What we can't do at this point is to raise new issues that we haven't already raised before. So it's toning down the issues to specific things. So that's what we're here for today.
Perfect. Questions?
Yeah, so we have the Labella's responses to our comments submitted. So we can't talk about anything in their VIS other than what's in this report that Labella provided?
So no, so if there was an original question that you asked the applicant and they didn't address it in there at all, then certainly you're allowed to go back and ask that question. Say, hey, you didn't answer this question at all. Or you answered it, but you answered a different question, right? So anything that you previously asked is fair game. The question is whether or not these responses answer your questions. Okay. What you wouldn't want to do is raise an issue that's never been raised, when you had your comments last time. Right?
And then you said the next phase would be for us to hold a public hearing on the DEIS alone, right? That's what it's all about.
Correct.
So I'm sure. Okay, thank you.
When do we expect Ken's report?
So we asked for the responses I think I asked for it by next Friday so that we have time to pull it together and present it to them at our...
Has he given you any indication how it's going?
No. But he'll respond to at the deadline. We'll make sure he does.
Right. So that's next Friday, is it?
I believe that was when I asked for it next Friday. And again, to present it at our next planning board meeting on the 25th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Other questions? So hopefully everyone has had a chance to go through the response. Just for the workshop, I think it's good if we just actually go through, it's lengthy, but we go through the numbers. If there is something to be said in the number, please speak up. If there's not, then we'll just move on to the next number, okay? So starting, and we won't take time just to read everything, but if you had a comment with it. So actually, starting with number one, not Ken's responses. This starts at the planning board responses, which starts on page 6, number 1, okay? Because Ken will address his responses and his questions. I should say, unless anybody had any comments or questions regarding Ken's and the responses to Ken's letter. No? Okay. So with the Town of Highland comments on number 1, where it talks about the number of campsites decreasing, adding the RV sites with the concrete pads, with water, electric, septic pits, how it fits into the rural character of the area, describing the treetop and safari model of RVs, and describe the definitions, permanent place for temporary use. What was not addressed was how they feel that the addition of actually 194 permanently placed RVs with concrete patios, concrete parking, concrete pads at the back locations, the water, electric, septic hookups fit into the character of the area. And I do think that's a crucial response, especially with hearing the responses of the community of the concern about how it does impact the area. So I would be requesting that they really do flush out how they see that fitting into the character of the area. My other question regarding 1 is, it's actually treetop cabins and safari tents as opposed to RVs that are going to be placed on gravel and concrete, and also I don't know if anyone saw that, if they will also have the hookups. They will also have the hookups. I don't know if I saw it or not. Are you guys comfortable with what treetop cabins and safari tents are?
Well, it's kind of confusing, isn't it? They're still saying that, I don't know, cabins and other units according to our code, which I couldn't find, are considered RVs. And I just don't understand it. How could a treetop, unless I'm misunderstanding something, a treetop cabin or some of those other things be considered RVs according to our code? And I looked at the code, I couldn't find it. Where they, that's in the middle of page 7. Further, pursuant to section 190-25 of the town's code, cabins and other units used for sleeping quarters in the campground are considered recreational vehicles. I couldn't find that in the one, and I kind of disagree with that, but I don't know. I just don't understand.
So we would ask for clarification on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments on that?
So they both have sewer and water hookups, or just water hookups?
Some of them, at least,
Septic.
Well, we can ask that to get
Yeah, some
clarification.
do. Some have common area, right? Like,
Yes.
some of them was it the Savannah, what's that one? Safari. Yeah, they have, instead of,
Yes, some have shared.
right, exactly.
Okay. Other things under number 1? All right. Number 2 is talking about the life expectancy of the RVs and the replacement plan, which I do think that they went through and they gave the response as far as what the replacement plan would be. My question or clarification on that is they talk about how the company's maintenance compliance standards of all RVs are more stringent than state and local standards. So I would be curious in knowing what their standards are in comparison to what the state and local. Is that a question we can get clarification on?
So it's a legitimate question. The question is does the lack of that information cause the EIS to be inadequate or incomplete? Right, that's really what we're trying to answer. You can certainly ask for that question and you get a response, but the fact that it's not here, is that a basis to say your entire EIS is inadequate or incomplete? Any thoughts on that?
No, what they're going to provide is the warranty or guarantee from a third-party vendor and that's what we're going to get. Like, they're not manufacturing these themselves, they're having a third party do it. And whatever they're going, warranty or guarantee is what we're going to get.
I guess my question,
We're talking maintenance, right?
what's that?
We're talking maintenance.
Replacement, maintenance, repair, yeah. Just because of the response was that their standards are greater than state and local standards.
Right, because it's factory built, it's built in a controlled environment. If you're stick building something, you have no control over what's going on until you finish it. So they're building the actual capsule, or whatever you want to call it, in a controlled environment. They'll give a certain amount of warranty guarantee for that. The exterior maintenance, or the maintenance to the hookups or anything, that's give it finished.
I think I want to keep it nice.
Yeah.
And they're going, you know, it's in their best interest to
Yeah,
keep
it's in their
it.
best interest.
So no need for that?
I don't think so.
Okay, great,
No.
very good. Anybody additional for number 2? Anybody have anything for number 3? Number 4 talks about my specific question with number 4 is that we had talked about the aquatic center, and this would go throughout the document, but we talked about the aquatic center being maintained in earth tone colors in perpetuity. Perpetuity. And here they talked about in dark, I'm trying to find the language, dark tone colors, I think it was somewhere listed there, but
Well, it did say, at the bottom of 4, it said, aquatic center showed, that's us. Yeah, no. So what they say back
somewhere in the document, a couple times it talks about the aquatic center being in dark
Let's
tones.
see if we can get them to change that to
Earth tones. Okay, so we're going to keep that? Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything with 4? No? Okay. Anybody with 5? 6? 7? 8?
Wait,
Yep.
oh, yeah, 6. So, I have not completed.
So 6 talks about staff being trained in EMT, CPR, Narcan, etc., and they did respond. I guess, Java, that's a question too. When they respond to that it's out of our purview,
Right.
then your comments or thoughts about that?
So what we'll do is, as we're going through them tonight, we'll identify the questions that are either legal in nature or jurisdictional in nature. I'm taking some notes, and I'll get you guys' response on these before next meeting. So I've identified question number one, which had reference to the town code. And I've also identified number 6 that was one of those questions.
Great.
So I have a question here.
We're on number 6 still?
Yeah, so
Okay.
on number 6 about, if the planning board lacks authority to introduce these with permit. I understand that perfectly.
Yeah.
But there was talk, and they had the neighborhood meetings when they presented this several years back, and people from the town were talking to them, and members of the fire department were there saying that, they should contribute to the fire department, because they're not going to have this on there. I don't know where that probably doesn't have anything to do with this,
No.
but it has to probably do with the public hearing, if they would.
So let's hold on to that because it does come up in number 61. Yeah. So hold on to that and we'll get there in 61. But anything else then under 6?
No.
Tim, did you? I'm sorry, did you cut you off? Did you?
No, you
No? Okay. All right. 7.
So, for example, it's going back to number 6, right? And we're saying there's no jurisdiction for the planning board to try to control the internal operations of the business. Legally, they're correct, but looking a little bit broader, right? You're looking at it as how many staff you're going to have training for these emergency situations. Because if it's going to be a whole lot, that's going to be a consideration for you because there might be less need for those such resources from the fire company, say local EMS, but if you've got none, then obviously there might be some impacts in terms of resources again from the fire company. So it is a legitimate question to ask. And while you can't tell them how many to have or how many not to have, the information as to how many to have or don't have does fall within your jurisdiction because you're looking at impacts on multiple resources.
So how would we word that then?
I'll take care of that when I give you a response. Yeah.
That's what we pay for.
Great.
And I think it is a valid concern amongst the community. People die there every week.
In the river.
In the river, not on the campgrounds, but on the rivers, and they're leaving from the campgrounds. So it's a valid concern. Yes, it's outside of our purview, but we all want to know, have they got trained people?
Correct. Yeah. It's one of those things, just I'll piggyback on that too. Like, for example, with the Narcan, which is a return to opiate overdoses. It's one of those things that we might not require, but it's best practices. I mean, if somebody's overdosing and you have a Narcan kit and people trained in being able to save somebody's life, why wouldn't you have it?
Right.
So it's not necessarily something within our jurisdiction that we can grant.
You can't require them to have it or not, but if you know that they do have it, if you know that they don't have it, you would put the fire company on notice, you put EMS on notice saying, hey, you might get a Narcan call and these guys aren't charged for it.
Yeah.
You're looking for those types of things.
Okay. Okay. Other things with 6. 7? 8? I'm not going to, so you're going to go through and any legal you'll,
Okay.
8?
But just let me know what you think is a legal thing, so.
Okay. You can just go through and see.
Vivi has it, so that's what I was.
What's that?
Oh, yeah,
Vivi.
what is Vivi?
I'm so confused, all these different identifications, how it affects, the bulk regulations
Just
overall.
know, Vivi is this one.
Yeah. Well,
That's
the one
number
that-
8.
That's the one that the utilities account is there specifically.
Is there a question or?
It's just confusing. I'm just trying to.
It's only,
I can't wrap my.
there's pictures and everything.
Yeah, I know. Their definitions versus what I
I'm just
see.
saying, there's-
Yeah, no, I know, right.
Yes.
Okay. Number 9? And number 10. So number 10, we had commented beforehand, it's with any incidents, accidents, etc., that were determined to be at the fault of the company, to be paid in full by the company, by the owner, which didn't make it into their response. But is that something that we can ask for to be included?
So say that one more time.
So any mitigations that determined to be at fault, the fault of FIMFO, Northgate, etc., that require, I should say, that require mitigation, that to clean it up,
Right.
if it's determined to be their fault, would be at their expense rather than the expense of taxpayers.
Yes, and something like that would be wrapped into your approvals, not necessarily in the EIS. But it's an important thing to highlight because when you do make a decision, if that decision is an approval, you're going to want to put in certain conditions on that approval. And this could be what you do.
So we'll take it out of the request for a response and move it over to the
Yes.
potential approval. Okay. Other comments with 10? With 11, so the drills, again, this to me is best practices, that they have a number of RVs and other equipment that are, well, mostly RVs, that are in the floodplain, and actually running drills at certain periods, either throughout the year, daytime, nighttime, significant weather, etc., when things are going to happen. To me, again, that's best practices to have that. It seems like that's not within, or they're saying that's not within our jurisdiction to ask, but it's one of those best practice things that I think is extremely important, because if it's, when the hurricanes come, or whatever weather comes through, November, and there's limited staffing and it starts coming in at 10 o'clock at night, are they going to know what to do, where to do it, how to move it, etc.? And are they going to do it within the time frame that they're required to remove it?
Yeah, so in the context of the EIS, to get to that, you're going to want to ask questions like, how many, accidents or emergencies have you had in the first X amount of years? How many floods? How have you responded to that? And then with that information, you can then think about perhaps adding this is another condition, right? So again, taking obligations out of here and putting it on them as part of approvals if you have the basis to do so. And the way you have that basis is based on what's presented to you and the information presented to you.
So can I ask you as well to come up with questions under number 11 that would get us there?
Yes.
Now, are these units going to be winterized, or are they going to be conditioned all year?
Yes. No.
They'll be winterized, right?
No. They can only be used for 6 months out of the year.
What, maybe they should just move from someplace else for 6
Well,
months.
we talked about that way back when, I don't know if you remember, but way back when, and they were absolutely not. They were absolutely not.
Why
And that's
move
something
an
that
RV?
What's that?
Why move an RV?
Oh, because in the event of a flood,
No,
when they're
no.
closed.
So the ones in the,
I'm
so
saying that
they should-
sarcastically, because it is an RV, it should be able to move.
well, it has to be able to move, and those in the floodplain,
Well, this,
they all have to be able to move, to be moved.
there's 7 and 35 or something like that in the floodplain.
Yeah. And there's, I think it was 3 hours, they have 3 hours to move them. To move them, each one 3 hours. So to me, it's, they don't have 3 times 35, they've got 3 hours to move 35. Especially if a significant storm event is coming through and it's going to get here well within.
Right.
No,
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so Javed, you're, okay. Other comments, questions with 11? 12? 13? 14? 15? 16? 17? 18? To me, number 18, what wasn't addressed was how the aquatic center fits into the character of the area. We talked about the character of the area, the RVs, concrete pads, all that stuff, but then also how the aquatic center fits in the character of the area. Here, explain the dark color palette. We're asking for earth tone. And then also, I was hoping Steve would be here, unless someone else knows, just with the language around the trees. I forget what he called when they died. If anybody can. And
But they've said they can put in village.
61. Is 61 trees enough? How do we know this? It seems like the trees that they're putting in would be less than the 30, significantly less than the 30 feet high trees that would right away block the 35-foot structure slide there.
I just, yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, the height of the trees, but it's so close to the highway. When you're driving, I think a 18-foot tree would probably be sufficient. I mean, if you were further away looking over the horizon, you may see it, but based on the position of that, it's right on, it's pretty much right on the road.
But do we want to get?
I'm saying if you're physically driving down,
Yeah.
you may catch a piece of it, but when you're driving in front of it, if they're going to put some kind of coverage in front of it, you take a, I mean, it's still there, don't get me wrong. But I just think what they're suggesting is, I think what they're suggesting is sufficient. I mean, I do it all the time. We use arborvitae's for coverage, 16, 18 footers, and they grow quick too. They'll grow a couple feet a year.
Okay.
I mean, to request 30-foot trees, that's a big undertaking.
That's
The important thing is that they
Yeah.
agree to maintain.
Like I said, once again, it's on the highway, it's in their
Yeah.
entranceway, it's in their best interest, I
You're
think.
doing 55 miles an hour.
Austin.
Yeah, it's not like, 2 miles of something else that you're staring at.
Hopefully they're not doing 55 and people walking
Well, according to the reports, there's nobody there.
I think we just want them to maintain screening
That's
from
it.
97, that's
Yes.
it. Whatever kind of trees that is, it is natural
Whatever they want,
vegetation
that's their
screening.
choice.
And if they put 16 8-footers in at construction time, you know what?
Very good.
They'll be there before you know it.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because Steve was talking, I wish I remember that language, he was talking about how trees die from the bottom, so even though you might have like a 20-foot tree,
But it depends on the
They're
type of
self-cleaning,
tree.
conifers are self-cleaning. As they
So
go
they'll-
straight up, the lower branches lose the sun, so they die, and that's why.
I mean, that's typical on a pine tree, that's
Yeah.
green all year long, but if you put an arborvitae in there.
So
which-
that won't
which is-
happen, that's
which
one
is-
of the-
Well, usually when you put screening trees in, they're gonna be like arborvitae, that'll be green all year long,
Right.
and will be from the ground up. Typically, that's what you use for screening.
That'll attract the deer.
I mean, yeah, pine trees do, you snap the branches off the bottom, and yeah, the thing is bare, but, screening trees
Screening can be a
specifically.
condition too, right?
Exactly. So for something like this, they provide you the information as to what they're going to put in when it comes time for approvals and what mitigation you think would be necessary. At that point, you can specify, if this type of tree would be, what you would want. It should be a minimum of this height as you initially planted. Remember, but your conditions have to be, reasonable. It's commercially not feasible to get a 35-foot tree to the ground, right? You have to start 10-foot, 12-foot, or whatever, and then give them time to grow.
okay.
I think it's in their landscape plan.
Yeah.
It does.
It is.
Yeah.
It's all there.
If I remember correctly, though, trees come up, I think it was your report, am I making that up? There was some kind of comment about the trees and maybe coming down the road and, was that?
Oh, yeah, the screening from the river.
Yeah. I'm not putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, later there's a comment about screening from the river.
We'll get to that, okay. Okay. Anything else with 18? Okay. 19?
Disappointing.
So 19 deals with residents should be permitted to have access to the aquatic center and mini golf course as a show of being a good member of the community, and the response was applicant intends to make day passes available to residents when the camp is not operating based upon their number of sites. Is there something you wanted? 20, 21, 22, 23.
22. I actually have a question about your intention on the question. Because it says, describe the impact of mechanical noise to RVs, which they did, and the impact to ambient sound, especially in the evenings, and its impact to animals and other people in RVs. And the question that they, right, which sounds to me like you're asking for 3 different things.
Okay.
And the answer only talks about the impacts to animals being outside of the scope of the project. So I guess I'm not sure this question. Like, I know it was a question that came from the town, so I don't know. It just didn't seem like it was.
That's number 22.
So I guess my question is more in the intention of the question. Was the intention of the question to only consider the impact of those things on animals, or was it to consider the impact of evening ambient sound, heat, and impact to animals?
Yes.
I think it was a broader one. You're in a plane, you've got 292 air conditioners running, it's going to have a significant impact. You're going to hear it.
Nice. 30 dBA at 50 feet.
I mean, they answered it, but
Yeah.
you got one.
You're
I-
probably
Does that sound like
75 dBA right there. I'm just trying to give you a number. Just going by the numbers,
Okay.
what conversations are.
Uh-huh.
This is 65, 70 dBA right here. and they're talking 30 at 30 feet, at 50 feet away. I'm just reading the data.
So it's less.
Yeah. Is there any factor of sitting what am I trying to say, the valley where noise carries, and you have a motorcycle that goes, and you can hear them. And is it going to carry, is it going to have a different factor because of
Motorcycle.
That depends on barometric pressure, really.
Which way the wind is
Sound
blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
is there any follow-up questions or?
I mean, this isn't like a milling plant or
Yeah.
mining
The river
operators.
drowns a lot of noise out.
Yeah, it's going to drown most of it out.
I mean, if this was in the hundreds per unit, then maybe something have a discussion. They're not going to be running
Okay.
all the time either. They're all going to be cycling, and most likely they're all modulating anyway. So these are probably worst case numbers when the unit's at a higher output.
Yeah, okay.
So, and they're spaced apart too, so it's not like you have this, 100 units in a 50 by 50 area. It's
Right.
spread out.
So on this one, right, applicants said they've updated their noise modeling, they've included it into the EIS. This would be the type of technical question that I would recommend sending over to Ken, make sure it makes sense to him, he's in agreement, and then he can advise you guys as to, did they perform the test right? Are these results seem reasonable, and what is the impact of the results? So Ken kind of maybe will reply to that.
Great. Okay. That's 22, 23, 24, 25, Peterbilt, 26. So 26 talks about, or asked about the 229 sewer sites, how that impacts the area and the character of the land, indicate agencies, etc. like that. The character of the land is that of an existing RV campground. The number of campsites has not increased. The campers were previously generating wastewater and will continue to do so as part of the improved operation of the campground. Therefore, the character of the land is not affected by the wastewater generation, but beforehand it didn't have the additional 229 sewer sites. So do we think that that response or question about that response of adding 229 sewer sites is how it does impact the character of the land because it's an addition? I think it's not outlandish to ask to describe how it impacts the character of the land, to add those.
So where's it being handled now?
Well, so again, there's a couple times throughout the document where their response is that it's an existing RV camp. The RV camp side of it is that they had 13 RVs, and now they're going to have 250 or whatever it is RVs, I forget the number. So even though it was an existing RV campground that was mostly tents and shared bathrooms and such, now each of those sites have their own water and septic and electric and concrete, gravel pad, concrete patios, concrete, etc. So it does have an impact. I don't think the response that it was an existing RV campground is true to what it's becoming.
Well, if you're just talking about wastewater,
Yeah,
theoretically, that's, if anything, is going down.
that's
So what
right.
were they doing with it before? What are they doing with it now? So A, you've got a lot more people using the back houses because they were staying in tents rather than RVs. B, it was my understanding that they had a lot of porta potties around. They're actually getting rid of those. So I guess that's a shift.
You're not changing really the volume
No.
of wastewater. You just
Volumes are probably going
you're
to
just handling
reduce.
it different, and And from a sanitation point,
Just
I
from,
think
right, just from
having,
that, just
having
looking at it
piped
from
in
that.
sites
Yeah.
is probably more
It's just being
Healthier
distributed over a
than-
larger area.
than
Okay.
expected someone who
So
walks
just in
that
relation to
house.
how it impacts the character of the land, there's no concern there then?
I
Minimal.
Okay.
All right. Number 27.
Jeff, I'm sorry, if we go back a moment,
What number?
it's actually 25. And maybe we should ask Ken, I mean, it's a very comprehensive analysis with the wastewater and stormwater, and they're claiming that their stormwater management is going to benefit Beaver Brook and the upper Delaware. I would like our expert to confirm that, and also to confirm that their chlorination system will not interfere with that. I think that's very important.
Okay.
That was number 25.
Yes. So we did 26, we're at 27. Number 28, so this talks about emergency services, providing the last 2 or 3 years of data on how many times EMS, fire, police were utilized. Will they be seeking a tax break? How will the owners financially support these services, especially if it increases the population of the town by a quarter to a half per weekend during peak station? The final response, the final approved scope for the DEIS requested the following. Conditional information, describe available police services, available fire and emergency services, policies on safety, including river, drugs, alcohol, firearms. The applicant has provided this information in the DIS. Incident data was not requested as part of the approved final scope. Similarly, a physical impact analysis is not part of the approved final scope. The applicant is seeking a payment in lieu of taxes pilot, which is identified in Table 1 of the DEIS. So legal, Jabu.
So I think this one is a little, I would say this answer is a little squirrely because you're just asking for data. And they should provide you the data on that. They're saying, well, it was never scoped out in the final scope, but the topic of emergency services was certainly in the scope. And I think it's a legitimate ask if that's what that
Okay. And this also goes into point of clarification that I've asked before the meeting to come up with, is that there were conversations about providing a community fund, and if I heard you correctly, part of that was for emergency services. Did I hear that correctly? So if it can also play out in this one as well, explain that part of the community fund. We'll get to, there's another part of the community fund later, but this part of the community fund. Okay. That was what, 28, all right, 29?
I don't see in the response anywhere where they say new figures showing the emergency evacuation routes map. I mean, I think it should say new figures showing the marked emergency evacuation routes. And sometimes you don't want to overlook the obvious, that people in different sections, they should have signs directing them.
Yeah, I know it came.
You go left, you go right. I don't see that.
So you
The
just-
routes are clear. The routes are
Yeah.
clear, but are they marked for the pedestrian? They should say marked emergency evacuation routes.
Okay.
So on something like that, let's just make sure we look at section 13.1.2, see what they're proposing, right? Because all of the respondents is saying is been added to that section.
Right.
So let's look at that section where they've added the information to make sure it's adequate.
Okay. 31.
Okay, I just have a question. Did you send any of these responses over to our fire departments?
The DIS, I did not. So let's get that over to them.
Yeah, but basically, you don't have to send the whole thing to them. These,
What's on the link? You can-
yeah, but this here is mostly about them and their emergency stuff, and these are the questions that they posed.
Yep.
Good idea.
Okay. Good idea. Which one is that? 30? Is that 30?
30, 31.
30, 31, 32. So on 32, I asked for clarification on the 41.5 acres that were being disturbed, which is different from the 13 acres. How many acres being about 60, 13? Many numbers.
3.27.
What is it?
3.27.
3.2, they've added, and it's up to 41.5.
Being disturbed, and I did ask for clarification. So on page 44, 3.27, they do, in the different steps, describe what this disturbed means from there. So that is, it is in the response. But I don't recall having seen the 41.5 acres being disturbed beforehand. Just other
Just the
acres.
13.
Yeah. So just ask for clarification there. But they provided it. It's there. Okay.
33 should go over to the fire chiefs as well.
Okay. 34. 35. 36. 37. 30. 38. 39. 40. 41. 42. 43. 44. 45. 46. 47. 48. 49. 50. 51. 52. 53. 54. 55. 56.
There seems to be, like, throughout, and this is one of the places, talks about New York State Route 87. And there's a few places that they do that, so I don't know if that carried over into the actual document I checked, but it's, so, not that it's a fit of thing,
Yeah, just to clarify.
frequent references to Route 87.
Right. And again, just as a reminder, I mean, they responded, they gave the answers, so it's our checking that we received the answers that we asked.
I'd like to ask the attorney about 57. Comment noted. Response.
Addition of aquatic center will have adverse impact to character and visual impact. And I think that goes back to then our earlier request to really talk about the character, impact of the character of the land.
Yeah, and it's not even a question, right?
Right.
It's a comment that we got.
Right. There's a couple times where they mention comment noted throughout the document. Okay, 58, 59, 60, 61. Okay, on 61, we asked for a description of what the host community benefit package payment is. and describe the social, economic, and environmental benefits of the project. This is, again, asked for clarification of the community benefit package, which is part of the impact to emergency services. And then they went and started describing a sewer district, which I hadn't seen beforehand. I don't know if anybody's done. Yeah. So so that had already been asked for to get clarification of that before the meeting, but now it's official as part of the meeting, is to get clarification on what that is. Yep. Okay. That's 61. 62.
So at 61, you're looking for like a dollar figure or some, what are you putting?
Well, that's what we need clarification on, because in conversations, there's a difference of opinion. I believe there were dollar figures mentioned, and so I'd like to just get the clarification from the parties that had that conversation to explain what they understood and have that common.
And it's an important question, because your job at the end of this whole process is not only are you looking at the negative environmental, social, and economic impacts, you're also looking at the positive environmental, social, and economic, and then you're balancing those things, right? And so you need the information as to what are the positive economic impacts of this project, so that you can counterbalance that with anything negative that comes up.
And who did the sewer district?
Yeah. So again, that's all the we're asking for the clarification of that, because it just that's the
Oh,
first
no,
time I saw it.
yeah,
I think
town
they're
board
just,
meeting?
I just think they're.
Did you read it?
Yeah. I mean, they've been talking for years about putting city water and city sewer in. It's just a matter of
In Barrington.
variable and elder too.
It
I
says
mean, there were
that-
discussions
it says
about, I
that
just think that
It's
they're,
not putting it in. It would be.
they're saying that they, you know, they would be able to help out possibly. They're not committed to this. They would help out, they would be willing to be part of any sort of project that may involve this. I mean, they're just coming up with something.
But again, that goes. There were conversations that were had. That's part of what needs a clarification to be put in here, in what the specifics of it are, what the dollar.
But realistically, if they're going to make a donation to this town, it's got to be tax deductible for them. So,
We just.
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page in that
Yeah.
it just needs a clarification on it. Yep. Yep. 62. 63.
these are all pen questions.
Which ones?
All the 60s, 50s, 60s.
Okay.
And once that is not, they did provide a lot of actual numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
For actual.
Absolutely.
They explained this.
62. All right. 63. 64. 65.
Well, 65 still doesn't answer when the study was done. It says when letters were sent. There's no actual date on when, did they do it at midnight or
They did define that somewhere.
Did they?
They did list when the studies were done.
In
I
the-
did see that in the
In the
very,
report. In
the various studies.
Yeah, and the report should be part of the EIS appendix, so it'll be
It will
it'll
be.
be there somewhere.
Yeah, I did see it.
Okay.
Anybody else?
And when, do you remember reading it and thinking that it was an obscure time or it was a regular time?
Yeah, they were.
Because
They weren't summer, in the heat of summer. It was.
Remember when we first got there?
Yeah.
They were just
Yeah.
middle of winter.
The reports, I forget which one's which, but there were some that were done, I think, November, some March.
And they did do summer ones, right?
I don't remember exactly, but they did list when they report, and I know that there were conversations about being able to determine then the impact that it would be over the summer.
Okay. Fair enough.
But is there,
No question.
okay.
So would it be fair to say we'll have Ken look at not just the response, but the traffic report and what's stated in the EIS, and make sure that the analysis was conducted in a reasonable manner according to industry standards?
Yeah, Ken's fairly on board with this.
Yeah. Well, just, I was figuring I would send him a note saying, please make sure to go through the entire response and get to the technical question. Okay. 67, so this to me seems like one that we have to keep on the list for the end. The town will hire, at the owner's expense, an engineer consultant to monitor each phase of the project, inspecting new and old, maintaining areas, approvals needed before moving to the next phase. While the response was not appropriate for this part of the DIS, it's outside of the scope of the DIS and should be discussed during the final stages. So,
I agree.
yeah, okay. That's accurate. Great. 68. 69. 69. So is this? So the question was, what happens when the owner, sell, or go out of business? Special use permit not transferred to.
No, stays, right? Motion granted.
Yeah, that'll be one I'm planning for me to answer for you guys.
Okay. 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84. 84 had a question. National Park Service found does not maintain essential character of order and violates the intent of the temporary by installing permanent RVs and utility infrastructure. Is that something that you would like to review or comment on or are okay with?
So, yeah, so the comment relates to this document doesn't consider any alternatives that would address where the proposal fails to substantially conform to a management plan, which was something that we requested in the initial scoping, but was not adopted in the initial scope. So, the only thing that was in the scope was for them to discuss substantial conformance, and they provided other substantial conformance. And they also provided other opinions about it, but they didn't provide our substantial.
So you're okay with it?
So you're okay with that?
I don't know that you, I mean.
We can't do anything. It is what it is, yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay. 85. So this falls into.
I mean, I would obviously argue that our determination is directly relevant and not relevant, but that doesn't seem to complete us.
Okay, so it would be addressed. 86.
Same thing.
So that would be later down the road thing.
Yeah, if it wasn't adopted in the scope to require them to evaluate alternatives, then I don't think it would work.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
89.
Okay.
So, in looking at the evaluation for the visual impacts, there are several references in various sections. There are references to visual impacts from 97 and visual impacts from the river. It doesn't really clearly state, I think, what the visual impacts from the river are, but it does state at one point that the areas north of 97 will not be substantially obscured by natural vegetation as viewed by the river. That was quoted from their document. Their response was that that mistakes the record. that it won't be visible from the river. So if the area above 97 will not be visible from the river, that's a more appropriate statement to include that it won't be obscured by vegetation. You know what I mean? But overall, that then opens up, then what is the impact? Like, I don't think that they're clear on the visual impact from the river. The references kind of always circle back to what vegetation will be provided along 97, and it's not clear what that is.
So is there
They quote, as such, no visual screening is necessary. So,
Well, that's what
But they-
yeah, but we're on two different planets.
But they quote that specifically in reference to the visual impact of the areas north of 97
North of it,
on the
right.
river. But it doesn't, it still doesn't clarify the visual impact south of 97. And also why, but back to the impacts of north of 97, then what is the relevant of it not be substantially obscured by vegetation if there's nothing to obscure because it's not visible? You know, like I'm just really, there's need more clarity.
So how would you phrase the response?
Clarify what the visual impacts will be of the development, the entire development, both above north and south of 97 from the river, and clarify the statement that the areas north of Route 97 will not be substantially obscured by natural vegetation. Like, what is the relevance of that statement?
So, I'm sorry, clarify statement.
Areas north of 97 will not be substantially obscured by natural vegetation as viewed by the river. If it's still in there, I mean, if they removed it, but they don't say that they removed it, so.
So they reference their appendix C here with visual simulations. Have we, either collectively as a board or has had Pam take a look at those visuals?
No, I've never seen the drone footage, have you?
Did they make the video?
Yeah, I didn't see the video.
Yeah, they had it at one of the meetings.
He said they have boat tours too, so he must be talking about it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's drone footage. I
I don't
remember
Well, it was like
driving-
driving, it was driving,
Yeah,
yeah.
driving down that.
Oh, I saw
Yeah.
the driving.
Okay.
That was
Wait,
I'm sorry.
now
Yeah.
drone or driving?
It was driving, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
that was a digital one where it was.
Just by this description, I'm thinking of the drone flying down the river and looking back.
Right, yes, I thought that that was, yeah, what was meant. Also, and this is more of a technical comment, for kind of rather than included in the EIS, but currently, if you're just talking about the existing park model RVs that are there, they actually are pretty nicely screened from the river during the summer months, because they can go up deciduous trees, you'll probably see them pretty well during the winter months. But you should definitely make a condition that those trees have to stay. You know what I mean? Because you're not requiring them to put in the trees there. But, you know, I just would hate for them to get the approval and then cut all the trees down so that everybody in the cabins have a nice view.
Was that on their map that they were going to take the trees down? Because I know they definitely identified that. So it's not on the
But
map.
it's
so
not
they
on the map that they're
It's not
planting
addressed.
any trees there. Right, it's not
It's not
addressed
addressed.
because they exist.
Okay.
Well, that's a good
That's all,
point.
you just want
So
to cover your
you're
bases.
asking that the trees that are there remain?
Yes,
That's-
just that.
So those were by the trees by the RVs by the river.
Special attention
river
should
and
be taken
the
to those.
Yes.
On the river side,
Right. And
Visible-
that's just one, like, that wasn't necessarily.
Visible from the river.
Yes, yes,
But that's at the end.
But there was,
That's not for this.
correct.
there was a question, and I can't remember where it is in here, and I can find it and send it later, but there was a question relating to, a lot of the impacts are measured based on the existing tree canopy that's remaining throughout the site, not just along the river, and then the proposed plantings. So, there was a question about whether they would retain the existing trees, and the response was that they would maintain the landscaping, which I don't know that that's exactly, I don't know if that's sort of, that they're answering the same question that's being asked. So clarity on whether the existing trees on site, period, that are not being removed will be maintained and replaced if they die, not just the landscaping that they're planning to add through the part of this project, because it would change the impacts of a lot of the house, like noise, sound, and visual impacts especially. If remaining existing trees that are not part of their landscaping plans were significantly removed, then that's an impact that wasn't evaluated here, and would create other impacts.
But we can't bring up any new.
Right,
It has to be
What I'm
within,
saying is you already did.
it has to
Yeah,
be
you remember
Yes.
framed.
Okay.
If we haven't already passed it, on the fire when we get to it, if we have the.
Does that come as part of the response or at the end when we condition?
But wait a minute, I need to clarify something. You just said that if trees are removed or come down, that you would like to see them replaced. Like, what happens if there's a 100-foot oak tree comes down?
Gypsy wall.
Gypsy, yeah, I'm not,
Yeah, so if there's significant, even if it's from natural loss, if there's significant tree removal, then they should make an attempt to replace it. Otherwise, the impacts of the development are going to be greater than what we're anticipated here.
It's good. I mean, we get a storm and clear cuts a bunch of trees that fall, and that can be a significant.
But, and even still, like over time, if you're removing a few trees a year and not replacing them, it doesn't take long for that to have a pretty big impact.
So with respect to number 87, and hopefully we'll come to that question, but with respect to 87, before I think this board determines that this response is inadequate, let's have Ken look at Appendix C and answer the question as to whether or not there's information in there sufficient to determine impacts, visual impacts from the river. Because it could very well be in there, we reference it. And once Ken gets that information, or you might say, oh yeah, here are the pictures, here's the simulations they did, here's what it looks like. It might answer the question. Alternatively, you can say that there's nothing that shows impacts from the river, in which case that's a gap in the that class.
Yeah.
so what would that be, like a forestry permit?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be, right? So if a tree comes down, a tree goes up.
I mean, I think generally.
Steve would know that.
Yes, where is he?
The general landscape should be maintained, not just the new landscaping.
Yeah, I know, I actually get what
I'm not
you're saying.
Every single tree should, that comes down should go back up. There's probably some that should come down, go back up. But just if you're, over time removing trees, even if it's not all at once, it changes the landscape in a way that was not anticipated.
Right, but I think that they're selling a product and their product is nature. So it would be in their best interest to maintain nature. What's that?
I don't think it's good to be best interest.
No, it's a clear cut.
Yeah, but that's not our, I mean, it's out of our,
Yeah,
I mean, it shows the whole site and all the trees and everything on their plan, so.
I
yeah.
mean, I guess it's.
And there's new trees on
the
there.
ones-
I mean, you do bring up good points. I mean, maybe Ken could put in there that, extra caution, or what methods are they going to take to protect what's there during construction, which there are ways to, box things off, stay away from this area, stay away, because construction sometimes takes out a lot of, and we don't have a tree code here where, you're not allowed to take anything over 8 inches in diameter, right?
The plan should show a limits of disturbance. Typically they do, and Ken usually looks for that.
I think it's in there.
I think it is in there too. It's pretty common that, you have your limits of disturbance, and the first thing in the project, the survey crew goes out and stakes the limits
Stakes the limits,
so that
yeah.
nobody goes across it.
Yeah.
That's something we should.
And that's actually a good point with the barriers for the trees.
Usually
Because-
in architectural plans,
Yeah.
this is what we want you to do.
Keep 15
during
foot away
construction.
from the roots because you're going to kill them.
Right, you can't drive on them.
Yeah.
It's done commonly.
Okay. Yeah.
And I do want to go back to 85. So the river management plan, the intent of the river management plan is to protect the river, and the provisions in it provide environmental protections. And so consistency with the river management plan is environmental, not just a legal consideration. And should be considered.
I think that would be a question for our attorney, saying,
Yeah,
clearly states, you are clearly erroneous. I mean, they put it in writing.
Okay. So 85, 86, 87, 88. 89. 90. And 91. Okay, so then Carrie, we go under the UDC comments, number 1, page 43. Number 2. Number 3.
Under 3, I know that that was definitely one of our comments in the original scoping document, and they were supposed to respond to all of those comments in the scoping document. I have to say, I didn't double check the approved final scope to make sure that that got into it, but I know that we asked about how the clearing is going to impact this, I'm pretty sure.
It's important. It's very important. That's a viable, financial producing South Street, you know?
I was a little unclear on that too. So when the final scope was adopted, it was adopted with the UBC letter and the town engineer's letter attached.
And yours.
No. Just the UBC and the town engineer. The scoping document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not the questions for the scoping document.
Gotcha.
So if the scope was adopted with those attachments, are those attachments are part of the
Yeah,
scope?
there would have to been something articulated in the record that we're adopting this scope subject to the additional comments.
So it seems like it was adopted as part of the scope.
Right.
Okay. That goes to number 3 then.
Same thing before, that was definitely one of our original comments on the scope.
But they've said they're not blasting
Yeah.
in other responses earlier.
Right, my comment was,
Unless-
are we sure that's the
No.
way to go?
No, they're going, what's going to happen, it's going to be like everything. They're saying no now unless needed. So down the track, if they need to blast, they're going in there and they're going to get a permit to blast.
Right, I guess my comment, and maybe this is a total, maybe I'm way off base, but it seems like everyone is assuming that it is better to not blast. And I just wanted them to look at it. If blasting could get over and done with in, I don't know, I'm not, when I was involved in construction, it was where we didn't have bedrock. It was all sand. So I'm not totally familiar with it. But I know that the hammering that has to be done in lieu of blasting is going to take a lot more time and is affecting the environment, or just affecting, the noise environment for a longer period of time, whereas you might be able to get it over and done with quicker if you can do blasting. I don't know, I just wanted
They're
them,
still drilling with blasting, so there's still going to be noise. And
I just wanted them
There's
to
still
say,
time to-
no, blasting is definitely not what you want to do, you definitely would rather do the hammering. But then the hammering might last for like 2 weeks, I don't know.
Yeah,
I just
so
wanted them to compare
the
it.
way to look at it is the blasting will take a week to set up on numerous sites,
Mhm.
and then they're one and done.
Right,
But the drilling will go on for 6 to 8 weeks.
right. So that's better?
Yeah, that's up Steve's, Ken's.
That's what I'm saying, I
There was
just
a lot
wanted
of
them.
public outcry, and I think they took it off the table.
Yeah.
Public.
Right.
Yeah,
Just the word blasting.
the
Right.
word
Whether it
blasting
makes sense or not, just the
on
word.
this side of the river.
Right, so I mean, I don't know, that's just, I thought they should compare the two and really talk about what the two impacts were. But
Did they give us a timeline on?
No.
See, that's what I'm saying, they didn't. They just, like you said, people didn't want blasting, so like, okay. we want-
And they were so adamant, you saw it, it was further against
Right,
it.
yes. But is
you
that
know,
just an emotional
As
reaction? and
as a
not-
builder, I think blasting is fabulous. It's one, you know, I don't mean that badly. It's one and done.
Right.
And we-
So, I mean, you know, it's up to you. I just thought it would be, I thought it would make sense to actually compare the two and not just assume that blasting works because of the public outcry. But, and again, that was something, he says the final approved scope doesn't require comparison, but again, that was definitely one of our comments.
Well, I think that they've, Kerry, I think they've left the door open significantly in their other answers that they will be looking at blasting.
Right.
They'd be silly. not
But they're not giving us a comparison of what the
No.
impacts are.
to.
And that's right, we should identify, here it's definitive, no blasting, right? But is that really the case, or
No.
is there a potential for blasting? Because if there is a potential for blasting, then I think a blasting impact study might make sense. Alternatively, even if they say no blasting, committed to that, do we have the information we need that on the methods that they're going to be using? Do we have sufficient information on what those impacts are, duration, what they're using, noise, things of that nature? Because if we don't, like you're going to want that information anyway, right? Because at some point, we might determine that's too intensive amount of construction, in which case they'll say, well, how about blasting? Then we're back here. So let's just make sure we've got all of the holes filled. Again, this is a perfect send out can.
But looking at it, construction-wise, I mean,
Yeah.
they've spent a lot of money looking at what they can do, what they can't do. They've said now that they're not blasting, so unless something comes up.
Did they ever have blasting on the table?
Yeah, they did. When we first, but they took that off the table very quickly and came up
And
with
this
a-
is like their last submission, right? This is what they're going to be held to, right? No blasting. So we're not looking at blasting impacts. Should there become a time where they want blasting, well, they're going to have to come back and we're going to have to, redo and
And
look
that's,
at where the
that's
blasting
in here in
impacts
one of their answers.
are. Right.
That they will, if they need to blast, they will readdress it and they will
Yeah.
approach
Right.
the town and the boards. I think that's fair enough.
The board or just the town?
Well, they'd have to go
That
to,
would be the town, right?
yes. Yeah, they just have to get a permit.
Other comments before? Five?
I'm still wondering if the response is a joke.
What's that?
They completely missed the point here.
Oh, we're on number 5?
Yeah, number 5.
Any evidence of hemlock, woolly,
Belgian.
thank you, or emerald ash, or
Should be
should be discussed?
discussed. And the response is they're not, it's not required because they're not rare, threatened, or endangered. No, but they're killing hemlock and ash trees. That's what the whole point of that question is. They're slaughtering hemlock and ash trees. I don't know what could be done, but I mean, that response is a joke. It's absurd.
Is there any,
I don't know what we could
I
do.
don't know what we could do.
6?
So I think, I presume that comment gets to that if there's a certificate that there's going to be significant loss of the forested land that's currently contributing to the EIS, what would be the plan? To make sure that the landscape stays consistent to what it is when the evaluation is done. Not safe, but is.
That could have been such an easy add-on earlier. You know, if we did say the tree comes down, the tree goes up. I mean, it's in their best interest anyway.
know the state's trying to do stuff with the intelligence. They imported some kind of mite that eats them.
So
The
is
mite
that
I'll take
response
is
accurate?
XG.
Is that response accurate when they said they are not rare? I'm just asking, or threatened, endangered?
Yeah, that's what was funny. They're growing. They're all over the place. I know on my property that they just got that every ash tree. Yeah, scent.
Yeah, I mean, the ash borer you can't do anything about, the woolly adelphid, there is treatment.
Yeah.
And is that an aerial treatment, or that's a tree by tree?
Maybe it's tree by tree, I think it's an injection.
It's a big problem.
So what are we doing for 5?
I don't know what we can do.
Carries a recommendation for that.
I mean, again, I would just like to, I feel like they should be telling us if they have stands of hemlock or ash, and what they would do if they were impacted. Again, this was one of our comments on the final scope. Like, this was not, you know, it didn't just make this comment on ag.
Right.
I mean, there has to
So
be
what's
hemlock
what's the
along
question?
So you want a clarification? What,
Yeah, I mean, even if they're not going to go in and look to see if they have the woolly adelphid or the emerald ash borer, they should at least let us know if they have stands of hemlock or stands of ash that are going, that,
will be affected?
right.
Well, you're just a public.
Well, yeah, further down. I mean, there has to be substantial hemlock along the brook.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. Asher probably is better.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'll have to check the actual approved final scope
So
to see if they incorporated our comments.
You'll email that to
They
me.
incorporated our comments.
you can email me the follow-up.
Yeah, sure.
So I think one way you can get that in, right, is if you're looking for specific tree species there, a scope that says provide for existing conditions. I think that's a legitimate ask there.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
See how it says existing conditions, which is part of the scope,
Yeah.
right? So asking for a specific type of tree which falls in the existing conditions. So I think you can ask them for that there. Usually, folks do like tree inventories, or was there one down here? And usually, when you clear within the line of disturbance, you're inventorying the trees as to what's being taken down. Do you know that that's been done?
Probably not, though.
No, okay. All right. So maybe the answer is in there, but if not,
All right, so that was 5, we good on that?
Yeah.
6?
Yeah.
7?
7, just wanted a little bit of a clarification. It talks about non-peak months, and that I think was the first time I saw that term. So what are not, because they're only open mid-April to mid-October. I was just wondering what are considered peak months, like June through.
The report continually discusses occupancy of the campground in terms of maximum occupancy. There must be a discussion of the existing and expected occupancy rates. This applies at a minimum to noise, traffic, parking. Maximum occupancy is used to present a worst-case scenario. The occupancy rate can never exceed the maximum occupancy, and therefore actual occupancy will be less than or equal to the maximum occupancy at all times. It is difficult to estimate the actual projected occupancy of the camp at this stage of development. Based upon the experience at other camps in other states, we expect 40 to 60% site occupancy rate during non-peak months and 70 to 90% occupancy during peak months. Well, so first and foremost, we know that the RVs can't be operated for 6 months out of the year.
Right.
So those are out there. So now you're just talking about
Peak months, like I'm hearing it's June, July,
It's
August.
probably Memorial Day.
It's Memorial Day.
yeah, they did. I did see
That's
that
it.
somewhere, but it's
That's it.
I think May
That's the
through
season.
October. Right?
That's peak.
May, June, July, August, September. Yeah.
They'll extend it though with these types of facilities.
Yeah, it will be extended.
Was there any clarification on that?
That's it.
No,
No,
okay.
they're just.
8,
Yeah.
is that 9?
I mean, this was discussed previously, that
Yeah.
And
10 is what we said Ken would look at, that appendix C,
Yes.
right?
right.
Yeah, and to clarify too, to make sure that we're evaluating not just the view of the mountainside part, but also of the area between 97 and the new parking lot, the new construction. Review the entire development, not just the view of the development above 97. Which is part of the scope.
Oh,
Yeah. I think we're on.
yes, it was.
Okay.
I thought their answer was mine at least.
I found that comment. It was in the planning commission's comments on page 17, number 24.
wait, where do we go back to?
Page 17, number 24.
No, but this was in relation to number 87, or?
The comment about the landscaping retention.
Landscaping.
Page 17, question 24.
Question 24, one of the planning commission's questions was, or comments was indicate will retain existing vegetation in perpetuity, include maintenance and replacement of future plants of landscaping trees, including fallen trees and elevation. That was one of the planning commission. The response is that the applicant will maintain landscaping. I think maintaining landscaping and maintaining the landscape. Landscaping sort of applies what we're installing.
Right.
Landscaping.
That should be clarified, like the
That's
forestry,
good.
the natural forestry aspect of
Should be
It's like-
maintained.
That's good. Yep. All right, that concludes a review of the response. As stated earlier, if we all have until September 20th to Friday, September 20th, to submit any additional comments. We'll put together the response so that we have it ready for the 25th planning board meeting.
Wait a minute. Not comments, clarification.
Clarification, thank you. Okay. So that's September 20th, Friday. And for our next planning board meeting on the 25th. Any final thoughts, clarifications, comments? No? All right, well, I thank you all for your time and attention and detail for all of this. It's certainly greatly appreciated, a lot of work that's been gone into this, so it continues, and thank you. And thank you very much. JT makes a motion to close. 10 seconds. All in favor, aye.